Hello and welcome to the Business Starts podcast from the Meinders School of Business at Oklahoma City University. I'm your host, Kyle Golding, Director of Corporate Relations for the Meinders School of Business. I am joined today by a very special guest, Dr. Kenneth Evans, the 19th President of Oklahoma City University. Good to see you today, sir.
Oh, thank you. Good to see you.
President of the university is a very big role. It's a very important role. So give the folks who are listening a little bit of background about yourself, where you came from before you came to OCU in 2021, and we'll get into a little bit of your educational philosophy and your business background as well.
Okay. I decided to enter academe when I discovered I enjoyed teaching when I was getting my MBA in Cal State Sacramento, and entered the doctoral program at Colorado to my first job at Arizona State University in the business school, marketing. My background, social psychology, marketing, and some analytics capability as well. At that time, I was working with a colleague who took the dean's role at the University of Missouri, asked me to become the department chair there. I did, later associate dean, etc. And then I was recruited to the University of Oklahoma to serve as the dean of the Price College of Business, which I did for about 7 years. For health reasons for my spouse at the time, I needed to be near MD Anderson, and so I began looking for opportunities in Texas. I had not thought about a presidency, quite honestly, Kyle. That was something that came up as a function of my search process. The fit looked good, so I joined Lamar University as its president and served there for 8 years. During that time, Nancy passed away, and COVID happened. So I would have probably left shortly after her passing, but COVID, I couldn't leave the university in the lurch during that period of time. After COVID began to subside a bit, I began looking at other opportunities and/or retire and/or do consulting and/or a whole array of other options that were all out there at the time. And I was approached by the then Vice President of Advancement here, who I had hired at OU to work with me in advancement in the College of Business. And it looked like it was a good fit. It was my first private school venture. Everything else had been public to that point, and it just looked like the right fit.
So coming here from Lamar and being at OU before that, those had to be different experiences, large school, small school, Texas versus Oklahoma. How are some of the similarities and how are some of the differences?
Well, OU at the time was around 30,000 roughly students, ballpark. Lamar was not small, it was 18,000. So a pretty good size operation. First off, of course, I'm not having to lobby with the legislature and all the things that I had to do in the various roles I performed in the public school space. I don't have to deal with the budget issues as it pertains to the state coffers and how they're distributed. Although I must admit the Texas legislature was very generous to us. And when I left there, we had the largest incremental increase in the university's history and among some of the highest in the state of Texas in terms of percentage increase. So we had done well. Enrollment had grown. Our performance across a variety of metrics looked really solid. Coming here, the university was coming out of COVID, and being in a performing arts space, COVID created a particular challenge because students couldn't perform in high school. The realities of musical instruments and vocal created the challenges. So as a result, they couldn't apply for opportunities here simply because they couldn't perform for judgmental purposes. So the consequences were our enrollment was down there. It was down really across the institution. We were down in the 2,400 roughly student count space. We're almost 3,000 now. So, significant increase in enrollment.
20% enrollment.
Yeah, and it's been due to the great work of across all the deans, the faculty, obviously the staff that works in enrollment management and a variety of other areas. But yeah, it was a different challenge. I enjoy coming here and doing what I could to make a difference to help the institutions survive and thrive.
Now, this podcast is in the Meinders School of Business, so of course here we're excited that you have background as a dean of a business school.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think you have a very deep affinity for the business school itself. And as the university president, how do you see the Meinders School of Business playing our role in helping the university move forward in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
The biggest challenge I have, to be frank, is avoiding the temptation of micromanaging in the College of Business.
Sure.
Meinders School of Business. Because obviously I have my own affinities and my own preferences, and my druthers are not necessarily those of the college or the school nor the dean. So I have to be very careful there. On the other hand, I see opportunities, and I can speak the language of the dean.
Mm-hmm.
We are able to see things, I think, with a degree of clarity in terms of how we work collaboratively that is a little bit different than across the university, where I'm often seen as somebody who's really outside of the discipline and therefore maybe doesn't really see the nuances of their space. I look at what we do in enrollment really more from the standpoint of how we can attract students, matriculate students, and successfully place them, irrespective of the degree program. It applies, obviously, uniquely so in the context of the Meinders School of Business. Yeah, I get this space.
That makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Because you also mentioned before getting into academia, you were working in some specialties in marketing and sales and things of that nature. So how did your professional experience lead into your academic experience, and now being able to bring that back through your role as a dean of the business school and now as a president of a university with a business school combined? How do you feel like that experience really helps you maybe not micromanage, but still guide in great ways?
Well, actually, I didn't reveal all my background to you. When I got my undergraduate degree, at that time it was English and political science. I was a liberal arts guy. I got involved in a construction firm and played a pretty significant role in managing that enterprise for about 3 years. And during that time, I became more and more curious about the business model and how we were doing what we were doing and why some of our performance metrics weren't what they should have been. And that's what drew me into the MBA program, coupled with the fact that I really didn't see myself long-term being in the construction world. Not that I had anything against it. I still play in that space, do a lot of handiwork, but I didn't want to make that my career. When I was in the MBA program, and then shortly after I graduated and I stayed involved in sales for a while, I got involved in sales and marketing for a transportation company. So I saw the logistics side of things, so I got a better understanding of transportation logistics operations from the perspective of both the customer as well as the provider of logistics, as well as both sides of the customer involvement, both my customer, the company I was moving stuff for, as well as their customer who I was delivering for. So I had a pretty good feel for services, customer service management, boundary spanners, how they interface between companies and their customer and then within their own firm, and all the aspects that surround that space. Very beneficial. Not only from the standpoint of how I do what I do, but it was also the focus of my research program for the better part of 20 years.
So you actually, that real world experience that wasn't just a single department like an accounting department or just a marketing department, seeing marketing, sales, logistics, customer service, that whole combination gave you a different perspective on how business really gets done.
It did, and also production quality, because we often had to bring material back because it was made wrong. And I wasn't sitting there to judge it. I was just simply there to listen to the customer and make sure that I took care of them appropriately. And then I had to argue when I took it back as to what the problem was. So yeah, it gave me a perspective that has been very useful in what I do.
And over the span of your whole entire career, working professionally from getting an undergrad and being out in the real world and all of these things we discussed, there's obviously been tons of change in business in general, whether it's technology, social issues, communication, et cetera. And then, we mentioned COVID earlier too.
Yeah,
Since
sure.
2020, there's been a dramatic change into all those things as well. How do you think all those things add up to how academic organization like OCU now has to approach 2024 and 2025 and 2030 for providing the education necessary for the future of our students?
Well, the first thing I asked Dean Baldona to look at, and frankly, he was already hardwired to do that anyway, was looking at the opportunity to introduce some aspect of analytics into our curriculum here in the College of Business. I mean, clearly, when you look at industry in general, whether it's in the quote for-profit sector, not-for-profit sector, fundraising, my world, enrollment management, and running a university, analytics drives our business. The better informed we are and control of our numbers, the better we're able to do what we do. So, for nothing else, it helped enhance curriculum offerings in the college. And ultimately, as you know, we've got a STEM designation for that program, which has been a tremendous plus for our ability to recruit international students. When I look at industry in general, there's the amping up of what technology has done in terms of changing and transforming industry has been stunning. Illustratively, Kroger is a major grocery provider, foodstuffs provider in Oklahoma City and doesn't have a single store. They're doing it all through logistics and home delivery. Amazon.com, there are many customers who don't go into stores anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The whole retail world is transformed, and it's in a matter of maybe a couple of decades. Having taught retail when I was an assistant professor, I can tell you that what I taught then is literally pre-Neanderthal compared to what the realities are in today's marketplace. It's also transformed the sales function, where salespeople were principally responsible for making single transactions. They're much more in the relationship space, driven a large part off of analytics and data-driven decision-making. Customers are much more logical in their selection process, much less about the affinities with the salesperson, and much more about how the hard numbers are performing. And the salesperson needs to know that, and they need to be transformative in the value proposition they provide customers, much like we have to be.
Right.
Our value proposition is, I need to make sure that a student who spends X amount of time here, and that time needs to be sufficiently short enough that it gives them a value proposition in their investment, but not too long, that it results in obviously being too expensive, but not too short, that I don't provide them an adequate education. Maybe if I can find a way to carve some of those costs out by working with the community college to drive out some of the prerequisites for some of the classes they're taking. All of that said, my value proposition has dramatically changed with my customer, and it's driven off of what I do with analytics. And it's in my enrollment management, how I recruit students is driven off of analytics. My recruiting that we're doing in India right now is driven off of analytics. We have, with a modest investment of maybe about $20,000 to $25,000, we've reached 15 million prospects in India over the past 18 months. And now, mind you, 15 million is like 2% of the total population of India.
Right.
So we got to be a little bit careful here about how we're reading the numbers. But we're in a vastly different space today than we were.
Speaking of international students, that market is becoming more and more important to higher education because graduation rates from American high schools are going down. And so
Not quite yet, but they will be shortly.
The trend looks that way, correct?
Yeah.
So one of the ways a university like OCU can prosper is to continue to serve our domestic students, but continue to attract students from all over the world. And we're capable of doing that now, where 20 years ago that was much harder to do.
Forgive me, I'm going to reframe your question before I answer it.
No problem.
Fundamentally, OCU had been in large part about recruiting freshman students, first-time entry into college. There were some graduate programs, but not a lot. So part of our recalibration, if you will, of our enrollment management process is looking to reach out to the adult education market, educating consumers in place that are looking to advance themselves in their particular professions and or literally kind of restructuring their whole career path and looking at a different direction. Now, going back to the international piece, you're absolutely right. Cautionary tale there is that, we've had ups and downs in the international marketplace. So for a long period of time, China was the major provider of international students, and then we had some significant changes in international relations in China and literally almost shut the door on Chinese student enrollment in the United States. Now India is picked up as being a large source of students. Cautionary tale there is that Modi has got a pretty significant positive relationship with Putin. That could have consequences in terms of the relationship the U.S. has with India, in turn then resulting in a potential decline in the availability of student visas to come to the United States. So for us, we have to manage a portfolio of countries and manage then the relationships in all those countries, often through vendors that we use to help solicit students.
As an alumni myself of OCU and having a long-term relationship, I've been out of school for quite a while, but now back working at the university.
Actually. Yeah, right. Not really.
I have some thoughts on some of the best aspects, the reasons I came to OCU originally that I think still exist today, and some of the things that often I hear misconception out in the community. People say this, that, or the other about Oklahoma City University. So what's one kind of hidden gem, like fact that you wish more people kind of understood about OCU? And what's maybe a misconception you hear a lot in the community that you'd like to push back on as well about whether it's in the business school or liberal arts attending Oklahoma City University?
Well, obviously the intimacy of the environment here is a huge plus. With 3,000 students, now you got to carve about 500 off that are in the law school, and that's a separate location downtown. And then we have a pretty significant graduate student population. More often than not, they're taking classes at night. So the undergraduate population is really relatively intimate, and those students know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it's because we have a very active Greek community. It's not huge, but a very active Greek community. And then the performing arts students themselves are very much an affinity unto themselves. They know each other. They socialize with each other. They're supportive of each other. They do a lot of activities together. They get involved in community service projects together. And then the various colleges have, outside of performing arts, have affinities within themselves. So the community of students is very intimate. Rare you could walk across campus here between classes and not see somebody you know and say hello to them. Now, mind you, when I was at Arizona State back in the day, we had about 30,000 students at the time, but now we're well over 100,000 in Arizona State. You could walk across campus and not see anybody you knew. And today, I'm sure that's more common than not. So there's that. The other piece of it is that we're prone, I think, in the context of what we do here at this institution, to give students the liberty to pick a direction that fits them. We don't pigeonhole students. And I'm not talking about just curriculum. I'm talking about whoever you want to be and however you want to be that person. If you are, say you're a math major and you've always kind of wanted to try to sing, you could do that here.
Right.
You could perform in a variety of different venues on campus and have an opportunity to explore the creative side of you. In fact, I like the fact that a student who may be in the STEM disciplines or maybe in healthcare in some direction could actually pursue some of their creative side of them, a talent that may very well manifest itself in innovation that you may engage in your respective field.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of place we are. Vastly different than what you would find at a large-scale public institute.
Right. In fact, when I was here working on my undergrad, one of my famous co-students was Kristen Chenoweth.
Okay.
And she was taking classes in the Mass Comm department as her plan B in case that whole musical theater thing didn't work out for her. So she was hedging her bets a little bit too, but of course plan A worked out for her really well.
Yeah, it did work out rather well, yeah. Yeah.
This is something that OCU's always been known for, right? For performing arts and for things of that nature and international business. And so now as we move forward through the future, and like we just said earlier, COVID has changed a lot of things, and education maybe feels and looks a little bit different than when either one of us were taking an undergrad or our graduate degrees. How do you feel that individual technology, the technology that someone has in the palm of their hand or in their house, whether they're a high school student or a college student or someone who's a working professional, that access to high-speed internet for video conferencing, for taking classes online, how do you feel that technology impact is going to affect the student of the future?
Well, the student in the future, at least in our case, within a matter of about 3 or 4 months, will be able from India to take a virtual tour of the campus, drop in as an avatar, of which they could pick among 6 different character types, then be interfaced with, I think it's Microsoft that's doing it, a chatbot that is AI driven, by the way, I might add, that the way the chatbot has informed itself, became intelligent, is it went out and has captured all the data that pertains to OCU and all spaces that are available, and then builds a repertoire of narrative that it uses to respond to questions that are posed to it by the avatar in the space.
Wow.
And that's all AI driven. So that conversation can go a different direction, and the Microsoft chatbot can move wherever it wants to go. So that's off the phone.
Mm.
So a student in India discovering that maybe OCU could be a place they might want to go could drop into our space, take a tour of campus, ask questions. Over time, we'll have captured a number of data points of various avatars, would have qualitatively data analyzed that, will identify correlates, so forgive me as I go into this in a little more depth, of what actually will progress somebody toward an application, and then we'll mathematically model it. So then we can apply different mathematical models to different types of students that enter the space and try to optimize the likelihood that they may seek to apply to the institution. So the realities of how technology is changing your life is that people are watching you. They observe what you do in your phone, and they use that information then to obviously optimize what they present in front of you. So the consumer has to get smarter, for one. The technology makes you more efficient, but what the technology also does is it doesn't give you the liberty to separate yourself from how it drives your life. You have to be able to put it down. You have to be able to carve out a space for you. Kyle needs to have time for Kyle. Right. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on the phone.
True.
Or in front of a computer or in front of a laptop. And that's my greatest concern. We are at a point in time today, if you look across universities nationwide, counseling services on campuses would service maybe, 0.5% or 1% of the student body on a regular basis. The incident rate of students seeking counseling services is infinitely higher. And part of it's because of what technology has done in terms of affecting individuals' behavior, self-esteem, and a variety of other things.
Let's now completely flip the concept 180. A young person is graduating high school and they're going to come and be on campus here at Oklahoma City University, whether they live locally or in the suburb or in another state or another country. Mm-hmm. What are some of the just amazing aspects and maybe unexpected aspects of coming to Oklahoma City, being on our campus, and the social life and everything that comes with it?
Well, let's talk about Oklahoma City to start with. So I was at OU, maybe 10 years ago, ballpark, something like that. And Oklahoma City had Bricktown and not a lot more, to be honest with you. Now, of course, the downtown area and then all these little pockets of unique retail and community and living environments has popped up. And the space in Oklahoma City is a marvelous place to live. And there's restaurants and communities all over the city that are in really cool pockets that people can get involved in. So, and then there's a vibrancy of nightlife here that wasn't here when I was here 10 years ago. Of course, the Thunder are a vastly different ball club than they were back in the day, although they did have the Beard and they had a few other players. Pretty doggone decent. So there's a vibrancy to Oklahoma City, and we're one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, so it is a cool place to live. Mm-hmm. And it's a neat place to be a part of. And if you have particular food preferences as you're coming from another country, you can find whatever you want in grocery stores or retail environment, restaurant environments for virtually any cuisine you're looking for. Right. Campus, stunningly enough, where most campuses, I was at football campuses. OU obviously is a huge football campus. So student life on the weekend is all about football. Student life here is often about performing arts. So there might be a musical performance. There might be a musical theater performance. There could be a vocal performance. There could be any one of a variety of performances that may be taking place. that students participate in. They're also now more likely to attend athletic events than they were when I first arrived. And we're seeing more attendance in volleyball and basketball and soccer than maybe we saw 3 years ago. There is an opportunity on campus literally almost every night and every weekend to find something to do right here, and you don't have to leave the campus.
Right. So as we conclude our conversation today, and I appreciate you taking the time to have the talk with me today, what's that last little nugget you want the listeners to take away when they think about Oklahoma City University?
Well, the greatest misconception that exists is that private institutions are not affordable for the typical student. When you look at our discount structure here and the number of scholarships we provide, we're extremely competitive with the public institutions. And I might add, when you look at public institution tuition structure, make sure you look at their fees as well, because oftentimes when you add it all together, it's not that far away from what we provide.
Mm-hmm.
Coupled with the fact that our alumni involvement and the engagement we have in terms of the opportunities for students to seek placement out of their individual career paths, whatever they might be, because our alumni care so much and love this place, is just different than what I've seen elsewhere. This is a place where your husband, if you will, using that word husbandry in a way to demonstrate that we cultivate and culture a student and give them an embrace from the standpoint of the opportunity for them to succeed that you don't find elsewhere.
There you have it, straight from the man himself, the president of Oklahoma City University, Dr. Evans. I appreciate you being on the conversation today. And for all of you, this is episode 2 of our podcast. We're getting this going by having the top people. We have the president, we have the dean of the business school. We're going to have lots of great episodes coming up soon. So you guys make sure that you subscribe, hit that subscribe button, share us on social media, etc. And if you want to know more information, okcu.edu. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.